The story of Yasuke does not begin in Japan, but on the salt-stained decks of a Portuguese carrack, a vessel of the Nanban trade that served as a floating bridge between vastly different worlds. As the ship crested the horizon near Kuchinotsu, it carried more than just silver, silk, and Jesuit Bibles. It carried a man who would become a living legend. The air was thick with the scent of the sea and the metallic tang of the volcanic soil of Kyushu. Imagine the perspective of the Japanese dock workers. They lived in a world defined by the Shikoku isolation, where the unfamiliar was often met with the edge of a blade. Yet as the gangplank lowered and this towering figure emerged, the atmosphere shifted from suspicion to awe. He was not merely a foreigner, he was a phenomenon. His skin, described in the Shincho Koki as being like charcoal, was a sight that challenged their understanding of the divine and the terrestrial. This first scene is the moment the door to the world cracked open, letting in a gust of wind from the African coast that would eventually fan the flames of the Sengoku period. Visitor who sought to convert the kings of Japan to the Catholic faith. To understand Yasuke, we must understand the mission. The Jesuits were the master intellectuals of the age, navigating the complex waters of Japanese etiquette and politics. In this scene, we explore the quiet conversations held in the belly of the mission houses. Yasuke, likely fluent in several languages by this point, acted as a silent observer to the grand chess match between the church and the daimyos. He saw how power was brokered through gifts of European clocks and arquebuses. This period was Yasuke's education in the East. He was learning that in Japan, silence was a weapon and posture was a language. He watched the samurai, the bushi, and saw a reflection of the warrior cultures of his own homeland. The discipline, the focus on the blade, and the absolute loyalty to a lord were concepts that resonated across the oceans, preparing him for the transition from a servant of God to a servant of the unifier. When the Jesuit procession reached Kyoto, the ancient capital became a cauldron of chaos. This was the most densely populated city in Japan, a place of refined art and brutal poverty. Word of the Black Giant spread like a forest fire. People were crushed in the streets, roofs collapsed under the weight of onlookers. This was not a riot of hate, but a riot of pure, unadulterated curiosity. The climax of this scene takes us inside the Honno-ji temple, where Oda Nobunaga waited. Nobunaga was a man who lived in the future, obsessed with the new. The meeting was a clash of titans. Nobunaga, skeptical and sharp-eyed, ordered Yasuke to be scrubbed, suspecting the Jesuit priests of using black ink as a parlor trick. As the water failed to wash away the pigment, Nobunaga realized he was looking at a masterpiece of nature. He didn't see a slave, he saw a peer. He saw a man who stood a head taller than his fiercest generals and possessed the strength of 10 men. In that temple, amidst the steam and the scrubbing brushes, the black samurai was born in the eyes of the man who held Japan's destiny in his hands. Nobunaga did what no one else would. He granted Yasuke the status of a samurai. This involved more than just a title. It was a total transformation. He was given a residence in Azuchi Castle, a stipend, and a ceremonial wakizashi. Yasuke was now part of the inner circle, often dining with Nobunaga, an honor reserved for only the most elite retainers. In this scene, we dwell on the training, the rhythmic thwack of wooden bakken hitting one another in the morning mist. Yasuke had to master the rei, etiquette of the court, and the bugei, martial arts, of the battlefield. He was a psychological weapon in Nobunaga's arsenal. When the Oda clan marched to war, the sight of a 6-foot-tall African warrior at the front of the ranks, clad in black lacquer armor and a towering helmet, was enough to break the morale of opposing clans before a single arrow was fired. Yasuke was the physical manifestation of Nobunaga's power, proof that the Demon King could command even the forces of the outside world. The year 1582 saw the final destruction of the Takeda clan, one of the Oda's greatest rivals. Yasuke rode at Nobunaga's side during the campaign through the mountainous regions of central Japan. This scene highlights the brutal reality of Sengoku warfare. It wasn't all honor and cherry blossoms. It was mud, blood, and the thunder of gunpowder. Yasuke was a witness to the changing face of war. He saw how Nobunaga used the three-line volley of the arquebusiers to shatter the legendary Takeda cavalry. Throughout this campaign, Yasuke's presence is noted in historical journals. He was not a bystander. He was an active participant in the unification of a nation. As they returned to Kyoto in triumph, Yasuke sat at the pinnacle of his life, a man who had traveled from the margins of the world to the heart of its most sophisticated military power. On a humid night in June 1582, the dream of a unified Japan was set ablaze. Akechi Mitsuhide, driven by a cocktail of personal insult and political ambition, turned his 13,000 troops toward the Honno-ji temple. Nobunaga was trapped with only a handful of guards, and Yasuke. This scene is a frantic, high-stakes battle. The temple corridors became a slaughterhouse. Yasuke fought with the desperation of a man who knew his world was ending. He stood as the final barrier between the traitors' spears and the room where Nobunaga was performing his final act, seppuku. The heat of the fire, the smoke stinging the eyes, and the sound of the enemy's war cries create a terrifying backdrop. Even after Nobunaga's death, Yasuke did not yield. He gathered the remaining Oda loyalists and retreated to the Nijo castle to fight for Nobunaga's son, Nobutada. It was a night of ultimate loyalty and ultimate loss. After the fall of the Nijo castle, Yasuke was captured. Mitsuhide, in a display of calculated cruelty, spared his life, claiming he was not a man of Japan and should be returned to the Jesuits. Here, the historical record of Yasuke ends, and the legend begins. Like a ghost in the fog, he disappears from the scrolls of the 16th century, but his impact could not be erased. In this final scene, we reflect on what Yasuke represents. He is the other who became the insider. He is a symbol of the bridge between the African continent and the Japanese archipelago. Today, he lives on in the hearts of millions, from the paintings of the Edo period to the global reach of modern anime. Yasuke's story reminds us that history is not a closed book, but a tapestry woven with threads from every corner of the globe. Though he vanished into the mists of time, his spirit remains a beacon of strength, resilience, and the universal quest for honor.